evening. I'm Bill Eberwine with Charlie Lutes, Conversations with Charlie Lutes, and our topic tonight, Charlie, is revival. And the first thing I came up with, a lot of the topics on our show have been things like spirituality, enlightenment, soul, words that when you describe them seem completely comfortable and worthwhile words to become familiar with, but they seem to have fallen out of favor. In other words, they seem to be belonging just to religions or something like that. Why do we have things coming and going like that? We seem to have a revival and a falling in and out of favor.
Well, in the first place, everything in nature runs in cycles.
Yeah.
Everything is cyclic. The only difference is when that cycle returns, because of the very nature of evolution or growth itself, there's always an overlay. It's always higher. It never returns to the same point. It returns to a higher expression. And you've seen fashions, even so, women's clothes particularly. There'll be one fashion, they'll come back after so many years, but there'll be a variance. There'll be some improvement, be somewhat different. It won't be the same. And this is the same thing with everything in nature. So in relation to this, oftentimes we refer to or speak of the revival. That this is being revived, or that's being revived, or the people are being revived, or something or someone is being revived. And this is true because, again, everything in nature has its own cycle and it runs in cycles. A human being, basically speaking, or generally speaking, attempts pretty much to maintain a status quo.
Yeah.
You get used to something, the way a certain suit is or the way it's designed, and you get used to this and you like that, and you just stay with that. Then all of a sudden, the fashion changes, and you have to change with it. You're forced to change with it, or else you look a little peculiar after a while. If you have real tight pants and they become broad, or vice versa, or whatever. And this is the very nature of life itself, that things are revived. Now, things that have no realism, things that aren't realistic, very rarely are revived. Sometimes someone will attempt to revive something of this nature, but it just falls apart. It just doesn't catch on at all, because there's no basis of realism to it. But anything that's realistic, yes, it has its place, you might say, and takes the attention of the people, or whomever it is designed for, and then begins to fade out. Coming of the sun every morning, the sun comes up, and the sun has its noonday, full brightness, and sunset. So, same thing here. But we usually associate the word revival with something that's being revived for the good of humanity. Very rarely do we speak in terms of revival for anything that doesn't have a basis of good to it.
You mentioned that things that aren't necessarily good or not meaningful or useful, people try to revive those things, but they're not usually successful. When I think of revival, I'm thinking of revival of knowledge, the revival of the interest in and growth towards enlightenment. And why should this, if something bad is hard to get revived, why should something that good get lost? Where does it go?
The time itself takes care of this. As an example, most everything is marked in purity. It has a certain commensurate purity to it. Now, take transcendental meditation as an example. Transcendental meditation is an exact process of going within yourself, turning the mind within, and fathoming your own interior nature. Now, no one, this is given in purity, you see. No one is deliberately responsible for causing this to be lost. It's time itself. Little by little by little, the purity descends, or the purity, it becomes obscured, till finally it doesn't work. So everybody just drops it. Then here comes someone else at a later period, at a specific point in, you might say, history or time, and revives this, brings it back into being, back into life, back into manifestation. So this is called the revival then, the revival of transcendental meditation.
That's what Maharishi is doing?
That's what Maharishi is doing. He's regenerating the people. Because if he's
the important when
purity is the purity of anything, the essence of it, whatever it may be, the essence of it is what counts. And as long as you have the pure essence of anything, then you have the pure benefit of it. Right. When you lose the essence of it, then you lose the benefit of it, or the purity of it.
When transcendental meditation started to get very popular, people started saying there are other ways to do it. Look in a phone book or look in a book to learn how to do it. This is not the right way to go?
Well, in everything, there's always copies of everything. Anyone who has some particular thing that catches on, everybody attempts to copy it. even maybe some performances someone does. People start to copy him. People say, well, that's the most sincere form of flattery and so forth, which it probably is. But no, people begin to imitate. There's a peculiar thing. Once something comes back, they see it's popular, and they see it's practical, and they see that people are taking to it, so everyone attempts to get into this activity. And this is the nature of almost anything, called the sphere of attraction. People get into this, they're attracted to it, then little by little by little, they weed out. Now, if you look at automobiles as an example, at one time there were several hundred companies manufacturing automobiles. Today in the United States, there's basically, I think, about 4. It always dwindles down. But it starts in great, like everything else, it starts in great activity. Now, the essence is there. The essence of the reality of whatever the revival is about, that's there. Everybody gets into it. It becomes very popular. But then there are always the few that maintain and sustain on down through time. But in transcendental meditation itself, as time goes along in so many hundred years, then the purity is almost completely lost. What Maharishi is attempting to do this time is, through modern technology, really, to establish the truth in such a way that it can be perpetuated visually by his own voice. Now, down through history, you had to take the word for what somebody said. Somebody said, this is what I think he said, because these are copies of what he's supposed to have said. Right. Now you have it direct due to the motion picture, television, and media that we haven't as yet even started to use, which will come into being. And many of these things will keep the life or the nature of the revival of the situation active for a long, long period of time.
Maharishi often talks about a tradition that keeps the knowledge and the wisdom lively, even though the general population isn't using it. He talks about the tradition of masters. And what purpose do they have? What do they do? While it's not being practiced amongst the people, is there some lineage that passes on the teaching?
The master?
Yeah.
Well, the master just simply is the one who is master of whatever particular thing is being brought forth. And he brings that to the attention of the people. As many people as are interested in it. As many people as see the value of it. As many people as he can interest in the thing. This is what it's about.
Yeah.
Now, of course, transcendental meditation, it's hard to evaluate that in relationship to most considerations of what a revival is, because transcendental meditation is just simply being put onto a path. A path, actually, of fulfillment, of completion, of liberation, of totality. This is a whole difference. But there are many, many, many forms of revivals, all sorts of revivals. Of course, we think in terms of the revival, such as the evangelist and the sawdust trail and this sort of thing. People being revived from their old ways, being brought back from sinful ways to productive ways, or shall we say destructive ways to productive ways. And this is generally, this goes on and on and on, because this is an ongoing thing with humanity. Humanity needs to be revived every day in the week, and to one degree or another, to one segment or another of society. So this is the very nature of revival itself. But revivals come, and this will automatically come back into focus because of the very nature of creation itself, because everything in creation is cyclic, and as it returns, back it comes. All things go back to, you might say, obscurity, oblivion, hula hoops, and so forth.
Are they coming back?
Well, someday, sometime, sure they will.
Yeah.
But there'll be larger hoops, or
So in other words,
something else will happen.
When it cycles back, it comes on a higher level?
Always on a higher level. The overlay is always higher. This is evolution. Otherwise, it wouldn't be anything. Evolution means things are always going upward, and things are always getting a little bit better. This is evolution. It's the nature of evolution. Everything is moving toward goodness, and towards better quality, towards a better way of life, towards a better understanding of life itself. All these things are taking place.
What kind of things will we see, in other words, in terms of the arts or music?
Oh, a very much higher form, a much higher expression of art and of music and so forth. I think the high expression of music probably was chamber music and so forth, concert music back in maybe the gay 90s, and then it fell almost back to the beat of the tom-tom. But from that it comes up, much higher overlay, and much, much higher form of music will evolve out of this. Even so, to what you might refer to as cosmic music. That's one of the things that you're going to see.
There are some musicians beginning to dabble with that. There's one named Yassos who's doing what he calls, music, paradise music.
Yes. There are several that are getting into this now. Just beginning to understand, just beginning to fathom this. And it'll be tremendous. Now, when this is brought up to fulfillment or to maximum efficiency or artistry, then you're really going to have something. Same thing's going to apply in art. You'll see cosmic art. It's going to be tremendous.
So that'll be something that the artist will be feeling something very expanded, very beautiful, and express that. And it'll have the same effect on the viewer.
What will happen, certain artists will be born with this particular insight, this particular ability, this particular creative ability. This is what's important. They'll be born with this creative ability, and they will manifest it. And then all humanity will begin to understand and to appreciate it. It won't be understood at first, certainly not. But everything has to undergo a revival. But for many ages, there were very few revivals.
Why do
all they did was revive the wheel from time to time. Greatest invention for thousands of years.
Why is it that sometimes people seem to see it before anyone else? That there are people that seem to almost stand outside of their time?
There are always those that are ahead of their time. Always. There always have been. There always will be. There are always those who see beyond the horizon, so to speak. There are always those that have that deep insight as to what will be and what will come. It's because they have that inborn nature or ability to cognize this. And however, in many cases, they're certainly not recognized in their time, or they're considered to be a little bit foolish or certainly not practical. Leonardo da Vinci, I think, was one who was way ahead of his time.
Yeah, he talked about everything from airplanes to contact lenses. And
a little bit of everything. Yeah. Yes, he was tremendous. But there are many, many in his category. Thomas A. Edison was one who saw way ahead of his time. There were no electric lights, if I recall correctly, when the telephone was invented. Many things, many new innovations. Of course, don't forget this too. As you move into an age, certain ages dictate certain things. Certain ages indicate certain things. In certain ages, certain things will be manifested. Certain things will be brought into fruition. So you might say the fantasy of yesterday is the realization of today. Because it was a fantasy at one time that you could talk across the United States to anyone, that you could even talk in the next town to someone.
Or television, whatever.
Yes, or see your picture on a wall all over the world or something, or on a television set.
Yeah.
Television sets will move to the wall. I keep saying wall, so...
Yeah, they're going to go to the wall?
They will, yeah. They'll be like a picture on a wall. Good-sized picture, too. There are indications that won't be too far in the future. So there are those who have seen a lot of... Sometimes people, there are what they call, or what are called, dreams, of a type of dream, where you see a lot of this. Visions, visionary dreams, of where you see much of this being used in operation. So you observe this, and then you tell others, well, this is what I saw. Some readily believe and accept. Others say this will never happen, cannot be.
We have to take a break now, and we'll revive this conversation in about a minute.
Revive it.
I'm interested in, Charlie, is that it's time that's responsible, you said, for the loss of understanding about the totality of life. Just the purity gets lost little by little by little. And it's...
Well, some things it's loss of interest, too.
Yeah?
Some things, yes, people just lose interest in and move on to something else. But we're talking about a great truth.
Right.
A great truth is usually just simply lost because of time.
And it's also time somewhat responsible for its being revived. It's just the need of the time.
If it can be lost in time, it's revived in time.
The reason I ask is that Maharishi often tells us that we can participate in the revival. That if a certain number of people begin transcendental meditation, 1%, 5%, that this will have a quickening effect on the hastening of a golden age, an age of enlightenment dawning. And that by learning the advanced programs and strengthening ourselves, we can have an effect. So how can we help move time?
Well, you can't move time. The best thing to do is move with time. That's the important thing. Nature says move or be moved. It doesn't say exactly how you'll be moved. You might be removed. But in any case, there'll be some movement one way or the other. And this is simply the fact that you're moving into a time situation. This is the time for something. This is the time for transcendental meditation. This is the time for space travel. This is the time for many things. This is the time for the nuclear age, or for the Aquarian age to come in, and all the manifestations which are of an intrinsic nature, you might say, in the Aquarian age, which might not have been so in the age that we're phasing out of, or the Pascean age. So we're coming into the age of enlightenment. Yes, humanity will be greatly enlightened, immeasurably so. So much so that it's almost impossible to believe today how much. And what Maharishi is attempting to do is to prepare the people for the age, so that the people will move smoothly with the age, that they won't have to be caught up in confusion because the age is upon them.
It certainly is moving pretty quickly. There was a...
Very rapidly, very rapidly. It's said that since, say 1840, long in there, that evolution has stepped up some 12 times.
I can believe
It's
it.
moving very fast, very rapidly.
I watched a TV show the other night on one of the brand X stations, and it was about 1968 and what had gone on in that year. And it's only 10 years ago, but it seems so different than what's going on now. Just
enormous changes in 10 years, enormous changes in, say, the last 20 years. Tremendous. Wait till you see the next 20 years and see what will change. It'll be just as spectacular. It'll be that much more spectacular than it was in the past 20 years. Because now you are coming into the realization of the age itself. We were first moving in, you might say, into the shadow of it. And now we're coming right into it. We're right into the age. So coming into the age, now the whole age doesn't manifest overnight, but you're in that age. And the things of that age do begin to materialize, yes. And one of the marks of that age is the fact that you will be able to draw upon your own potential, latent as it's been for many a century. But now you can go within yourself. This is what makes the visionary, the one who literally can see, the seer. What does he see? He sees the truth of things as they are. He doesn't see things in fantasy. He doesn't see things that are the past. He doesn't see things and doesn't cognize them or recognize them or realize them. He sees them as they are, and he realizes and recognizes them for what they are. This is why you have to go in and draw upon your potential. The mind itself, as we've spoken of many times, we're just simply working in the periphery of the mind. But there's a tremendous depth there that we have not explored yet. We haven't even tapped it. We haven't even begun to do this. But we're going to do it because that's a mark of this age.
Psychologists
Extreme intelligence.
say 10%. Would you say that was an accurate?
What?
That we're losing 10% of our mental...
Oh, I think that would be an over-exaggeration. I'd say if we're using 5%, we'd be very fortunate. I've heard said many times that we're using about 1/1,000,000th of our mind potential. Just 1/1,000,000th. That's nothing. That's not straining anyone. So think what we're coming in. Not that we're going to develop full totality of mind or anything overnight, but now the possibility is open for us to do it. You see, that's the great thing. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden you have the ability to do it. Tomorrow you're doing it. But it does mean that you're now on that path, you might say, of unfoldment, which hasn't any limitation.
A lot of people are on the path now, learning, doing transcendental meditation, finding themselves growing. And you have been very instrumental in encouraging people and enlightening people about the possibilities of transcendental meditation.
Well, the only thing I've been doing really for the last 20 years is just simply in contact with public, because I was of the public, you might say, of the world. I was in the business world, and I relate more to those people.
Yeah.
I'm not peculiar in that sense. I mean, I'm not an oddity, and I do have a certain stable look about me. So in presenting what I present to people, I present it on the basis of what I have experienced.
Yeah, I was going to ask how you got involved in not only in learning...
Need and necessity, my own personal need, my own personal necessity, to come into something greater than that which I knew, because I was at a point of frustration in my own life, and I mean thoroughly frustrated. But it's like everything else. If you ask to be shown, and you have to come to a point of where you're almost totally frustrated and where you feel very isolated, then you begin to ask to be shown the truth. And one of the amazing things is you will be shown the truth. And the truth is that's in your own self. It lies within you. And when you begin to fathom this, then you begin to fathom the mysteries of life itself, and not only that, but the mysteries of creation. All this begins to open up to you. You see, truth will only be revealed to someone according to their ability to receive the truth. Truth just isn't poured out on everyone. It's too great a burden. Humanity couldn't handle this. So it's given to them to the degree that they have receptivity for this. And this is what I found. So I've had these experiences. I do know what it is. And I speak more, I would say, in mundane terms, more in terms that relate to people at every level. This is, to me, in my own conception, a very important thing. To speak in terms that people are unable to relate to doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In my own observation, just a personal observation. So yes, I've spoken all over the United States and all over the world for a great number of years, for a lot of years. And people do seem to be able to relate to, people can always relate to someone's experience, you see. If I tell someone about transcendental meditation or about anything, it's what my experience has been with it. I've had this experience, I've had that experience. People can relate to this, they can understand this. When you refer to something in lofty terms and you speak of it in large scientific terminology or medical terminology, then this narrows it right down to a very few who have the understanding or the awareness of that particular technical language. But if you put it in, I would say, a broader sense, based on your own experience, then there's certainly greater receptivity for the subject, whatever the subject is.
Speak of Gurudev. Maharishi often gives him credit for the revival. What place does he play in that?
Well, now, Maharishi comes from a tradition, and the tradition is the master and the disciple and the master and the disciple. And as he refers to the Gurudev, who is the Shankaracharya of India.
Maharishi's teacher.
Maharishi's teacher, which was his personal teacher, his personal guru. And he says, what I do by the grace of my master, which is certainly in keeping with Maharishi and in keeping with the whole tradition. Because without his master, without his teacher, without the Gurudev, as he says, what would he have? He wouldn't have had it. So he's bringing this to the world through the grace of his master. And I'm sure others are doing the same thing, through the grace of their master, their teacher. After all, by and large, you do not teach yourself, you are taught. You do not educate yourself, you are educated by others who are educated, let's put it that way. So this is why he gives great deference and obeisance and devotion to his master. Because there was a great love relationship there, devotion, ultimate devotion is what we're really talking about, of a master and disciple.
In this age that's dawning now, is it something that's to last for some time?
Yes, this age will last the whole running age, you might say, of the, basically, as far as history goes, it runs about 2,000 years. Now, Maharishi would like to set up the purity of transcendental meditation to such a point that it would run for thousands of years. Maybe it's very, very possible.
Has there ever been a time before, when we speak of other ages, golden age of Egypt and of Greece and of Rome and of the different cultures, but they seem to be isolated things, and then we're aiming at such a large kind of goal. Is there anything like this in the past?
Well, they had a more limited vision, let's put it that way. There were the golden age. There's been the golden age before. We're coming back to a golden age, yes. An age where there's great peace on earth, there's great happiness, there's fulfillment, there's lessening or almost total absence of negativity and frustration, and people are able to fulfill their desires, their needs. The greatest thing in life is to have desire and no means to fulfill it. This is pure frustration. Now, your desires will be realistic. Oftentimes, the reason we have not been able to fulfill our desires is because they simply haven't been realistic. Now they will become realistic. They will be more realistic because they will be of your own basic inner nature. And your basic inner nature is real. That's the only real thing about you, really, is your inner self. Now, when you begin to express this in the external aspect of life, in the material aspect of life, you'll become realistic, and not only that, you'll come into tune, or to attunement or in harmony with life itself. And this is the whole purpose of life itself. So it's the revival, really, the big revival. The big revival of your own self is what we're really talking about.
Thank you very much, Charlie.
Thank you.
We'll be back next week.
Okay.